You turn off the lights. You press play. You invite nightmares into your living room because you want to feel alive. You sit through 2 hours of carefully constructed terror, safe in the knowledge that absolutely none of it is real. The blood is just red dye. The haunted houses are just hollow wooden frames on a brightly lit soundstage. The terrifying monsters take their masks off and eat donuts between takes. That is the comforting lie you tell yourself. But what happened when the cameras stopped rolling is far more terrifying. Consider the grandfather of modern horror, The Exorcist. When it hit theaters in 1973, audiences fainted in the aisles. People physically threw up in the lobbies. Therefore, the media quickly blamed the gruesome special effects and shocking profanity. But the true horror of The Exorcist was not projected on the silver screen. It was festering on the set. Director William Friedkin wanted a reaction of pure, unadulterated panic from his actors. Therefore, he fired actual guns near their heads without warning. He refrigerated the bedroom set so deeply that the actor's breath literally turned to ice. But the physical torment was just the beginning of the nightmare. One weekend, the entire set of the McNeil house mysteriously burned to the ground. The studio claimed a pigeon flew into a circuit box. Yet, when the smoke finally cleared, the only room left completely untouched by the raging flames was Reagan's bedroom, the exact room where the fictional exorcism was taking place. Was it a curse, or just a string of deadly coincidences? According to set whispers, the cast and crew fully believed a dark, unseen entity had attached itself to the production. 9 different people associated with the making of the film died before it even premiered. You watch The Exorcist today and think you are seeing a fictional movie about a demon, but you are actually watching a documentary of a cast losing their collective sanity. Let us transition from demonic possessions to a different kind of haunt. Poltergeist, a classic, terrifying tale of a normal suburban family besieged by unseen, angry forces. The movie clearly tells us that disrespecting the dead brings absolute wrath. Therefore, it is incredibly ironic that the filmmakers committed the exact same sin they were warning the audience about. Look closely at the background of this frame, specifically during the climactic muddy pool sequence. The mother, Diane, slips into the excavated swimming pool. She is immediately surrounded by rotting, mud-soaked corpses. Her screams are piercing. Her terror is absolute. Why does it look so convincing? Before I tell you, I want you to guess how Hollywood usually solves a budget problem. Do they build cheaper sets? Do they use clever camera tricks? They do. But sometimes, the cheapest option is the most macabre. The special effects team realized that manufacturing fake, realistic skeletons out of rubber and plastic was incredibly expensive. Therefore, they bought real ones, real human skeletons. They were imported from a medical supply company in India because human bone was cheaper than plastic. Actress JoBeth Williams was thrashing around in a pool of actual human remains. She did not know it at the time. When the gruesome truth finally came out, a dark, heavy cloud settled over the entire franchise. 2 of the young stars met tragic, highly publicized deaths shortly after. Fans immediately pointed to the desecration of those remains. They asked a chilling question: did the production invite a real, vindictive poltergeist into their lives? But human bones are tangible. You can touch them. You can bury them. What happens when the threat is entirely invisible? Let us examine the 1976 masterpiece, The Omen, a film specifically about the birth of the Antichrist. When you make a movie actively challenging the devil, you might just get his attention. The production was an absolute magnet for catastrophe. Star Gregory Peck's plane was struck by lightning on his way to London. A few weeks later, the executive producer's plane was also struck by lightning. Lightning strikes on commercial flights are exceptionally rare. Therefore, 2 occurring within the exact same production circle is highly improbable. Yet, the terror aggressively escalated. The crew rented a private plane for aerial shots, but they rescheduled the flight at the very last minute. That exact plane took off later that afternoon and crashed directly into a car on the road. Every single person on board died instantly, and the car it hit, it belonged to the wife and children of the pilot. The devastation was absolute. Then came the climax of the curse. The special effects designer, John Richardson, created a horrific, graphic decapitation scene for the film. Months later, he was driving his car in the Netherlands. He got into a terrible crash. His assistant was decapitated in a manner completely identical to the movie scene. Richardson woke up in the wreckage, looked at the road sign standing near the crash, and it read Omen, 66.6 kilometers. Read that again in your mind. Omen, 66.6. The devil is always in the details. We obsess over these supernatural legends because it absolves us of responsibility. We desperately want to blame ghosts. We want to blame ancient curses. But the human mind is capable of creating its very own hell. To understand the madness of this movie, we have to look at the mind of its creator, Stanley Kubrick and The Shining. When you watch this film, you see a brilliant adaptation of a haunted hotel slowly corrupting a man. Yet, the true psychological horror was not printed in the script. It was the director's brutal method. Kubrick wanted a performance of sheer, unadulterated nervous breakdown from actress Shelley Duvall. Therefore, he systematically and deliberately isolated her from the rest of the cast and crew. He forced her to perform the iconic, terrifying baseball bat scene on the staircase an agonizing 127 times. Her tears on screen are not acting. Her exhaustion is not clever makeup. She was dangerously dehydrated from crying for hours on end. Her hair literally began falling out in clumps from the extreme stress. Kubrick deliberately broke a human being to capture a fleeting flicker of authentic light on celluloid. When you watch Wendy Torrance desperately swinging that bat, you are not watching a fictional character fighting a ghost. You are watching a real woman fighting for her psychological survival against a relentless perfectionist. Let us push this psychological exploration even further. Think of the most suffocating, grimy horror film of the 1970s, the Texas Chain Saw Massacre. Focus your mind on the infamous dinner scene, the shrieks, the absolute, unhinged chaos. Why does it make your skin crawl? I want you to guess what made that specific scene so uniquely horrifying. Was it a masterclass in method acting? Was it the lighting? No, it was literal torture. The cast was trapped inside a Texas farmhouse during a blistering historic heat wave. Temperatures inside the room reached 115 degrees. The set was not decorated with plastic props. It was covered in actual animal bones and rotting, decaying meat. Therefore, the stench was so unbearable that crew members frequently ran outside just to vomit. But they kept rolling the cameras. Actor Gunnar Hansen, wearing the suffocating, heavy Leatherface mask, could barely see anything. The extreme exhaustion twisted his mind. In a moment of absolute delirium during the dinner scene, he did not use a fake, dull prop. He grabbed a real knife and actually cut Marilyn Burns's finger. She screams in the film. That scream is real. She is bleeding real blood. The madness you see in their wide eyes is the terrifying realization that they were trapped in a boiling room with a man who had entirely lost his grip on reality. We consume horror because we want to safely peek into the abyss. We want the adrenaline spike. Therefore, we construct a sturdy psychological wall between ourselves and the glowing screen. But as we have seen, that wall is incredibly fragile. The curses, the tragic accidents, the psychological torment, the real blood spilled on the floor, they all prove one chilling truth. Sometimes the most horrifying monster is not the demon written in the script. It is the ambition, the recklessness, and the dark energy summoned by the act of creation itself. The next time you sit down in the dark to watch a classic slasher or a paranormal thriller, pause for a second. Look closely at the raw fear in the actor's eyes. Ask yourself, are they screaming for the camera? Or are they screaming for help?